there's so much injustice in the world, right, that we see and we experience. There's so much brokenness inside of me that I know, and some that I'm not even aware of yet. So coming into discovery of those things and seeing them out in the world, I think all of us have this desire, something inside of our heart that longs to make those things right or to see them be a different way.
You don't get what you feel like you needed. And yet on the other side, I was in my values. I chose connection. If I can say, if those two boxes are checked, even if I didn't get what I needed and wanted, it's still okay. It's okay. It kind of sucks. It might hurt some. And like, it's still okay.
I want probably in my nature to be like the rescuer or the righteous one, right? To just go love others well by taking care of them and providing for them, right? So what's really challenging for me is to come to and confront my own past and brokenness and shame.
Welcome to Courage is Built Here, the podcast. I'm Justine Froelker, licensed professional counselor, author, speaker, and corporate trainer. Here, we bring my Courage is Built Here curriculum to life and community. Each week, I invite a guest to walk one of the 5 courageous pathways with me through authentic, sometimes tough, sometimes hilarious conversations. No performance, no polish, just real people practicing real courage with grit, grace, and a whole lot of love. Hi, friends. Welcome back to the Courage is Built Here podcast. Today, we have Pathway 4, Love Others Well. Love Others Well is a really, really big chunk of the entire curriculum, and it includes skill sets like shame resilience, how shame shows up in ourselves, in our relationships, how we react from it. We also talk about empathy, and we operationalize trust. We learn curious language and practice hard conversations. We also talk about courageous feedback. And so it's a really big part of the work. And it includes like so much of this conversation that you're about to listen to is just so rich in like, how do we have hard conversations in a way that can break the loops that we tend to find ourselves, especially in relationships, whether or not it's at home or it's at work, like these things that happen over and over and over because we're reacting to one another versus someone saying, hold on a second, like we've got to break this loop. And it means we got to have a tough conversation, and someone has to get courageous enough to actually do that and to say things in a way that they can be received, to say things in a way that are aligned with our values while honoring someone else's values, to use curious language so that we decrease the likelihood of someone grabbing their defenses, to allow people to ask for what they want and need in those hard conversations. Things like, I thank you, and I need to take some time with this before I respond. Or someone who may need to like write some things down and have those notes accessible at that conversation. Like there's all of these different ways that we can have that. We also have a great conversation in regards to like who we surround ourselves with and like how complementary we are. And when we have relationships built on love and trust, that it's a lot easier to assume the best of people and to love and lead others well. My guest today is Sam Riden. He is the CEO of the specialty company TSC. I have had the pleasure of working alongside TSC for a little while now. They actually saw me at a keynote several years ago and have now since brought me in. And their leadership has gone through my entire Courage is Built Here training, the 3-day training. And they also brought me in to do like a half day with their whole company so that everybody could get a touch of the work. And I get to meet with them on a regular basis, the leadership team, to do what I call accountability sessions. And it's interesting when people ask me who I work with, they of course want me to niche down into like one industry. And I haven't done it yet. Maybe that's why I'm not rich yet. Everyone has feelings. Very few of us are feeling those feelings well. And we come to work and we've got to do life together, and we're not doing that very well either. And so that's who I work with, except I've kind of figured out that I have these like 2 lanes. And so like, I tend to work with companies who have a really courageous people first culture, like TSC. Like they just have an incredible culture. It's been some of the most powerful events I've ever been part of when I get to work with their team. And I work with those kinds of companies who want to deepen the work, who want more skills and language around the work to continue to care well for their people, because they know and they have seen and they have proven that it improves production and productivity and performance and the bottom line. And then I have the other side of companies that I work with that, like, their culture is not really people first, or I've been called in because there's something really hard has happened, or there's a lot of toxicity, and they're wanting to kind of do cleanup and hopefully create a people first, courageous culture. And so you will see that he exudes this work in kindness and humility and love. Pathway 4, love others well. And also that the work is never done. And so I hope you love this conversation as much as I do. Let's welcome Sam to the podcast. Welcome, Sam, to the Courage is Built Here podcast. Thank you.
Thank you for having me, Justine.
I'm
So
excited.
excited to spend some time with you.
I know. I'm excited for this. I was like, I get to hang out with Sam today. So, all right. First question that everyone begins our conversation with. When you think about courage, most especially through the pathway that I call Pathway 4, love others well, is there a story or a moment that comes up for you?
Yeah, I think at first, just your work in general is incredibly challenging, and it's rich though and deep. And so the more that you engage, I think the more that we learn, and the more that I grow. The story that I was thinking about is I was trying to get in current recent time and tense to have a partner that we've been in business together for 10 years. Asked him for permission to use this story too, because as I talk about it, even though I won't use his name, it's pretty easy to tell if you know us.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it, it, we have grown up together, really, in work and life and business, and there's so many dynamics inside of our relationship that have so much past orientation to them that I find myself it's hard for me to have like clear, kind, challenging, difficult conversations, and especially if there's a need for change. And so recently, late last year, I was really struggling with the growth of our business, and considering how we're leading in our own roles, and specifically wanting my partner to change in some ways. And our cycle that we had been on, the loop that we had been, was kind of in this space where I'd be reactive, use part truths and some examples, and try to be persuasive in the communication or conversation. We get out of sync, and we couldn't really get on the same page. And it really was just asking for, ownership and responsibility, clear communication, and just us trying to mature and grow up in how we lead and serve our people in our company. And so, I had some solitude, some real time on vacation, where I got to go slow with Kelly Jo, my wife, and I started to write about it some. And when it became clear, it was easy to see, and I could approach him in a conversation that was less threatening, less personal and emotionally reactive. So I found myself sitting down with my partner. We had a long conversation where he put himself in a listening posture, which I was very grateful for, and asked a lot of questions. And then he asked for some time, to go and consider and think through. And we've learned our dynamics, and are always learning, but learned like he's learned it's good for he not to respond like immediately, especially if he feels defensive. And usually that's what we do. But he was so wise, and maybe the way that I engaged it, and the spirit and tone, and how authentic and vulnerable I was about my desire for his affirmation and approval, and even fear in engaging that conversation, kind of helped set the table. And so he came back, and when we re-engaged it the next day, was just so generous, very vulnerable himself. And since has led to just an incredible amount of growth and change in our relationship, and I think in the way that we serve our company and our people.
Yeah. Yeah. Isn't it like I like that you said, like, you had to recognize the loop that you were in. Like, how often is, like, especially I think our closest relationships, we get all up in our stuff, and it prevents us from seeing these, like, really reactive, fairly predictable loops. And we're just like, we're almost triggering one another, and someone has to be like, hold on a second, how do we break the loop? Like,
Yeah, no, we need help, right?
yeah,
We see the same therapist, and so that's actually helpful, right?
I love it.
The same coach and the same therapist, and so I can't imagine what his world's like, right? Because here I am, like griping, and
Uh-huh.
then here he is probably griping,
Uh-huh.
right? So he's got all the cards, and here he
Right.
is trying to coach us and help us navigate. But here's what we know, right? We know how much we love and trust each
Mhm.
other. Right. And so when it slows down and you realize it can start from, we start from a place of love and trust in each other, then it's a lot easier to even consider breaking the loop because it, it,
Yeah.
it is, we're both Enneagram 8s too. So you can imagine what
Ooh.
like that dynamic's
Oh
like,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
And he's gonna grab anything that I say, and I may be persuasive in trying to help him understand what I actually am trying to get him to believe in my position. And if he picks up on one sliver of something that's not authentic or true, he's going to hang on to it.
Sure.
And rightly so. And he may throw the whole concept or idea or request out over
Uh-huh.
that one thing. So it is a
Yeah.
dynamic we're learning about
Yeah.
ourselves.
There is an element. It's hard to work with people, and I think especially lead with people who you're really, really close with. And at the same time, it's that like you said, love and trust, that foundation, like that assumption of I'm even if I don't like what's coming out of your mouth or how it's coming out of your mouth, I really do assume the absolute best of you. Like I know it's coming from this. You have a heart of care and compassion for me because we love and trust one another. It's that whole like, will you choose to believe that people are doing their best? That, like when it's with people that we know really well, the trust is really deep. They've been in our lives for a very long time. They are friends, they're family, and we're working together. For me, I feel like there is that extension, like I extra generosity, which just helps all of the other hard stuff. It doesn't mean it's easy. It navigates a little bit more smoothly.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's when you've experienced the highs and lows of life together, and you've shown and seen a genuine, authentic sacrifice for each other,
Yep.
right? When you think about it, and I'm like, well, yeah, he has sacrificed for me and for our people and our company,
Yeah.
and I can go to some moments in time and think about and see that it really personally cost him. I'm like, oh, he loves me. He's shown it,
Yeah.
and in some of the hardest times and seasons of life, and I think he'd say the same. And so you're right. It is it is what I'd say it this way. It's one of the most challenging things in this world, working with people that you love or gain in love and relationship over a long period of time. And it's
Yeah.
also one of the most sanctifying and fruitful things I think that we
Yeah.
can experience is true partnership
Mhm.
with others.
Mhm. It is it is wild because, like, every time I have an event, right, when we talk about pathway for love others well, I always make that qualifier, like, okay, if the word love's too squishy for you, because we are talking about work, you can shift it to care, dignity, respect, compassion, empathy, whatever, like common humanity. For me, it's love. Also, love is one of my values, so I get that,
Yeah.
and yet when I am working with teams like you all, teams who really are they have that healthy culture. They have the courage work, and they've brought me in to continue to like make it deeper, like embed it, like get more skills around it, things like that. It's always love. It's not, I mean, yes, of course it's care, dignity, respect, all of that stuff. It's always actually love though. And yet I do most spaces I walk into, I get quite a bit of pushback. And that's why I'm always kind of like, people are like, who do you work with? And I go, well, companies who are already people first, who are doing this work and want more support, more skills around it, just extra help. And then the companies who are not people first, who are running through people horribly, or being brought in for HR investigations because the culture is that bad. Like those are my two lanes I'm in. And I don't, when I work with teams like you all, it's love. When I'm with some of my school districts, it's love. Like it is love every single time. And so I wonder,
Yeah.
like, what's that look like? Like you are the leader. You're also a dude. Like, but what's you all embody love others well because that's how you lead others well. Have you had pushback on it? have you had to get over some of your own stuff with it? What's that looked like?
I'm always getting over my own stuff, right? So, Justine,
That's
that's
the work.
yeah, yeah. I'm always getting over it. I think I either think way too critically, and my internal dialogue is really negative at times, incredibly
Me
critical
too.
and judgmental, and then oftentimes it's external in the same way, right? What's coming out of me is just a reflection of what's
Oh, yeah.
inside of me, maybe in
We
a
live
lesser
what we
version.
believe. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But when it comes down to love, right? The truest, most complete sense of the word, not, like in your work too, empathy is not sympathy, or
Yep.
it's not enablement or right, rescuing mentality or a righteous one in some kind of sense, right? That's the opposite, in those cases. And so, but like to really love, to sit with, be with, and to do life with, um, there's so much injustice in the world, right? That we see and we experience. There's so much brokenness inside of me that I know, and some that I'm not even aware of yet.
Yeah.
And so, coming into discovery of those things and seeing them out in the world, I think all of us have this desire, something inside of our heart that longs to make those things right, or to see them be a different way. Either we feel like we can do something about it or can't. And in business, specifically, it's like I think there's almost no more powerful force in this world than business, and the engagement, interaction with people, and how we do justice, love, mercy, walk humbly inside of our business, how we love our people, our customers, and our communities is
Yeah.
like, it's very purpose oriented and driven for me. It's a calling and a reason I feel as if I exist. Pushback at times, of course, you know, seems squishy and mushy. And I think as people get up close and personal with me or spend more time with me, they realize, wow, this is anything but a squishy or mushy
Uh-huh.
guy. And he is oftentimes too dadgum intense and, and, like a bull and a bulldozer
Ooh,
instead of,
yeah.
the gentle one, which I want to be more, gentle and kind and caring and compassionate. And so this is a hard, pathway for me. It really is. But a great one.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. What's it look like to like when you do sometimes get like so I feel when you're like bull, that bull or like a little bit too intense, like I definitely feel that for me. It's like, whoa, man, like you're a lot. Like, and at the same time, it's how can I use that part of who I am to turn toward others and bring them into this connection to foster the trust, to love and lead others well. Because it also means, I don't know, I think it also means for me knowing when it's not someone's thing, and I do have to maybe dial it down a little bit.
Yeah.
Not to change who I am, just to pull from a different part of who I am maybe, because I leadership is making sure we can deliver in a way that they can receive it.
Right. Yeah, there's got to be instinct and intuition that we're using in all relationships, and trying to consider and be aware of hey, you've taught me a lot about this, like the power dynamics that are at play,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
So if I come into a conversation inside of our organization at any level, especially those that I'm not with day to day,
Mhm.
then just being aware of the power dynamics is something that's very important. I also find that, um, vulnerability, like, honestly, Justine, like, and authenticity in who we are, there's something, that seems to be, very encouraging or connectable in this particular work. If we will lead those with, the power in the relationship with vulnerability and say, you know what, I'm a little scared of this
Yeah.
conversation.
Yeah.
And that's how I started with my partner. I was like, dude, I'm I'm scared, because I love you and I know you love me and I don't want to hurt you and I don't want a relation. I don't want you to be disappointed in me, you know? And so
Yeah.
coming at it from a place of vulnerability, I think oftentimes give us the best chance of success, but success is still not, guaranteed.
Yeah. It's I that is some of the hardest part of this work. I just did a boundaries video for Courage Tuesday. And it's like there it is not uncommon that I get that message or that I live out this work and you don't get what you wanted. You don't get what you feel like you needed. And yet on the other side, I was in my values. I chose connection. Like if I can say if those two boxes are checked, even if I didn't get what I needed and wanted, like it's still okay. It's okay. It kind of sucks. It might hurt some. And like, it's still okay, I get that message so much. And so I think part of that is like, it is coming back to that vulnerability of like, I don't know what this will do or what will come on the other side of this. And what I do know is not saying something actually will do more harm
Yeah,
than saying it.
absolutely.
But that's really tough. Like, and it
It
also will
is.
always come back to always, I don't want to say easier, but easier, more, maybe easier to navigate when it's with someone that you already have that trust with.
Yeah, I think in the vulnerability space, right? Absolutely, right? Because it is, it's kind of like I'll oftentimes talk about it or teach it as a pool, right? There's
Hmm.
depths of water, and there's this 16 feet of water. If we remember, like the old YMCA pools with the big high dives, right? It was a super deep
Yeah.
end that you might have seen or experienced, and so, but you can't just like oftentimes just jump right into the 16 foot of water. You've got to kind of progress in relationship and by testing, vulnerability inside that relationship over time and build some trust with each other.
Uh huh.
But for sure, you're 100% right. If those that you have love for and long relationship with, it's a lot easier to
Yeah.
to be vulnerable.
I can see where sometimes though, I can imagine that power dynamic sometimes, like, you definitely cannot jump into that 16-foot right away, like, especially as a leader. Like, recognize that's recognizing that power dynamic for sure. I also think that sometimes I have to sometimes remind leaders that, like, you may have never broken trust and you don't know what someone's relationship with authority is
Yeah.
or their last boss that was
Yeah.
horrific or abusive, that they might be projecting some stuff onto you. And so, like, that recognition of that power dynamic, I do think helps us recognize, like, and maybe even kind of like assess, okay, I want to choose vulnerability because in order to connect with this person, even with and through the power dynamic, I must choose vulnerability because connection is only born of vulnerability. And
Right.
yet, at the same time, what is the depth of it that is safe, courageous, aligned with my values, things like that?
Yeah, that's right. And all kinds of other dynamics out in the world,
So
like
true.
race and gender and things
Yeah,
like that
all
too,
of it.
that we have to be very, very careful of because I can have a great respect for someone, but I also can with the power can come into I can come into that
Yeah.
conversation and just got to be aware. No,
Uh-huh.
I think another component too that you kind of touched on, and it made me think this. It's like in community too, even outside of our workplace, right? Because
Mm.
if I'm gearing up for something that I feel the weight, the weight of the conversation, whether it be a big conversation or a small, but you know how sometimes you
Yeah.
can just be moved in the spirit. Move you. It's like, hey, this is a weighty conversation. Um, Man, having those safe places to try out and test my motives,
Mm.
be curious about how to say it in a way that is connectable and not judgmental or critical or
Yep.
condemning is so helpful. Or when it just comes in regular life and business, because sometimes it moves very fast and
Yeah.
you find yourself reflecting on the other side. You didn't get exactly the response that you were hoping for, and I know, or I try to learn, hold that with an open hand
Yeah.
and not try to control that, but then to allow others and invite them in outside of those relationships where you have other really safe, close relationships with, and
Uh-huh.
invite them in to ask for feedback on, um, all right, let me talk you through this
Yeah.
scenario. Let me talk you through this conversation, how I said it. And I want you to be curious with me and give me
Mhm.
feedback.
Yep, absolutely. That to have that inner circle of people, like, there are mirrors, right? Like,
Exactly.
they we need them and want them to reflect back to us what they see, what they notice when we're off the mark, when we're not in our values, when we do screw it up, and to also pick us back up and be like, "No, that was not great, and we're gonna figure out how to get you
Yeah.
back on track," right? Like, and yet at the same time, those are hard, having, like, someone reflect back to you all the time.
Right.
What you may not wanna see can be like, that's vulnerable in of itself, right? Like,
So vulnerable.
I think that's one of my favorite pieces of, like, when people are having difficulty in their relationships, I'm like, "You chose him. He is your mirror." Like, when Chad tells me I'm acting a certain way, like, I probably do need to believe him. Like, right? Like, he's my mirror.
Like, Chad, tell me, but not like an accountant.
Right, right, exactly. One of our sayings is Chad's my dream crusher because I'm that visionary and he is just like, nah, how's that going to happen? Like this morning, he sent me a picture of, because I tell you what, training tables and chairs for retreat spaces, they are not cheap. Oh, and they're kind of like cars. Once you buy them, they're worth nothing. Like,
Yes.
and it's kind of like this weird space of like, you need to get the nice ones because people are hard on things, right? Like, and at the same time, it's just like, where's that in the budget? So he sends me, he goes, if we could go and sit in these and make sure that they're comfortable, what do you think about these? And of course, they were like used chairs, but they had red seats. And I was like, no, I hate it. Like, red is not part of the scope in that room. And he's like,
crusher.
so that's a no? Because I really like the number on them. I'm like, it's a no. And so, but like, I was like, you're not making me have red cushions. No, you're not. Not in that space. It needs to be warm. Like, you will not crush that dream, accountant Chad.
Yeah. But how beautiful that is that you guys have that authentic conversation relationship that's so safe, right? And you're different people. Different is good.
So much.
And
yeah.
And but you guys are connected too. So I mean, it's no. Also I'd say that those closest relationship like Kelly Jo for me, my wife, and then my partners, and you know my community group, accountability group, that group, they also help us from being so hard on ourselves.
Yeah.
Right. So is that mirror, as you say, and they reflect back to us. Sometimes they're like, "Hey, Sam, stop. You're being too hard on yourself right here." Yes, there's always a sliver of sinfulness inside of every one of your motives that's pride oriented or fear oriented, and yet you were engaging with humility and grace in that conversation. You just didn't get what you hoped for. You know, so they love us well too in those times when we are being really hard on ourselves.
Yep. And there's that piece of like, it's always interesting to me, especially working with team cultures, that like, for the most part, when we choose our partner in life, our spouse or like most people, you choose someone who compliments you. I would never be married to me. Oh my word. That would be so many feelings and words in a house. Like, no way. Like, right. Like Chad compliments me. And yet, like when we're forming a healthy team and remembering to love and lead one another well, we forget that like the things that compliment us, if we aren't doing our work, if we're not working on our own self-awareness, if we're not coming from our values, if we're not choosing connection over everything, just like at home with our spouse, within our team, like those differences that are meant to be complementary, your strength is my weakness and vice versa. And like your brain works so differently than mine, and you challenge me on things I need to be challenged on. If we don't do the actual work though, of loving and leading others well, which starts with our own self-awareness, it ends up, we like butt heads all the time, and it's conflict and triggered and all of those things. And like, that's at home and at work. And so it's like, what's it look like to form those relationships that are complementary, also mirrors to who we are, and choose love no matter what?
Yeah, no, it creates frustration and reactivity, right? If we're not
that's the
living
loop.
in our values. Yeah, that's exactly right. And it's in health, walking in our values, we find that it's a beautiful amplifying type effect, right? Because all members of one body working together for the good of the whole, right? And so I can't be the brain or the heart or the hand and the foot at the same time. If I try to do both those things, it's not going to go well. And so, you see it working together in a great way when it is complementary. We use a tool. I guess I don't know how you guys will do this on the backside, but it'll be Patrick Lencioni's material with Working Genius, right?
Yeah.
And he looks at the geniuses and frustrations and the competencies of every person and simplifies. We've used all the Enneagrams and Myers-Briggs and a DISC over the years, and it really helps us put together those teams in a way that are complementary, so that you don't have the same geniuses always working on the same projects and missing out on what we can really kind of, another way of saying, in community, where you have wholeness of idea and thought and work.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. It's always, whenever I have I love all of those things are disc and Enneagram, all of those things. Lencioni's. I actually just had somebody send me 5 dysfunctions of the team to add to the library for the retreat space. So like, I was like, oh yeah, I like that's a great one. But I think, and it comes up with, for so many people, and I have a lot of Enneagram 8s in my life, like a lot. Um, I really do. And I'm a 4. So, like, it's like straight I have 1s and 8s.
Oh,
And so, like, where I can get pushback on some of those things, like, is when, well, I'm just a D on disc, so that's why I am the way I am. Or I'm an 8, that's why I'm mama bearing on you, right? Like, and it's like, no, these things are not things to excuse staying stuck or poor behavior or not choosing courage. These are ways to understand myself, like, and to understand you, like that piece of like, I mean, I'm married to an Enneagram 9. And so one of the most mind blowing things I've learned is that like Chad takes forever to tell a story, like forever. And I am like, I'm a storyteller for a living, right? Like, and I
right.
learned that the more I interrupt his story, the longer they get. Because he's a peacemaker. And like, so it's like, I had to like shut up.
That's so funny.
Right?
That's
But
so
it's like,
funny.
how often do we take these pieces of what we've learned and we use them as an excuse to stay stuck or to behave poorly rather than saying, oh, that's how come I do this.
Right. Where
I,
in fact,
yeah,
yeah, in fact, they're tools, right, for us to
right.
learn how to love others
Yeah,
well, right, and to
right.
love more authentically and fully, not only not to excuse our own
Yeah,
brokenness or sinfulness or the way that the
yeah,
wrong ways that we engage others.
right, right. It is a
Yeah,
phenomenal lens though to understand one another. Like I have a health department that I work with in rural Nebraska, and they just redid all their values. They've done their own values, and they actually like made these beautiful signs and put them outside their office doors. So like, who you're walking into, right? Like,
that's cool.
and like they use it as a lens to understand one another and how they relate to the organization's values especially. So it is this piece of like, how do we use all of these tools to understand ourselves more and especially understand others more
Yes,
in a
I
world
love
that is
that.
telling us not to do that, especially. That's so good.
Love
So
it.
good. All right, you
A
ready for your
little.
last 2 questions?
Yes, I'm
All
ready.
right. So the one that you know is coming. When did courage look different than you expected, and what did it teach you?
The first thing that came to my mind, and so I'm gonna share the first story.
Yep.
I had a good friend, a longtime friend that I have a lot of respect for, that recently over the holidays he came to my house and sat down and told me that he was an addict. His family had confronted him over the holidays, and he was checking himself into a 90-day facility. And when he sat with me and I listened and I was trying to do my best reflective listening and
Mhm.
and validating him and affirming him, um, I I just found myself afterwards walking slow and considering, man, how courageous is that? You know, to really sit, to own it, to hear it. And he
Yep.
did it in such a short cycle or loop. I mean, it like happened one day, the intervention, and then he came and shared with me the next.
Wow.
And then 2 days later, he was going to an intensive
Like, wow.
90-day
Yeah.
program, and has never been before, right? So this is just like it was incredibly courageous to me
Yeah.
as I thought about that.
Yeah. That to receive that is maybe one of the most courageous things ever, right? Like have these people say like, "You're not okay, and we have to do something." Yeah. But to actually receive that love is maybe one of the most courageous things ever.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
And,
That's good.
and to say like my thinking has gotten me into this
Yep.
spot, and so I don't trust it, so I'll let you think for me for this next
Ooh.
stretch.
Oh, that's
That's
so good.
it's I was incredibly courageous.
Yeah. Oh, that's wow. That's so good. Thank you for that. All right, your last question, your surprise question.
All right, hit me with it.
What does loving others well require of you that is surprising?
Hmm. Oh, surprising, but I'll say hard.
Okay.
Hard.
Yeah.
Um, I want. probably in my nature to be like the rescuer or the righteous one, right? To just go love others well by taking care of them and
Yeah.
providing for them, right? So what's really challenging for me is to come to and confront my own past and brokenness and shame. Um,
Yeah.
I think that's the hardest part for me in loving others well
Mhm.
is to continue to do the internal deep work on learning more about myself.
Yeah. The job of savior is already taken.
Yeah, it's already taken for sure. It's already taken.
I know. I have that too myself sometimes. It's like, but I know exactly what could help you. Like,
Right.
right? And that's not always helpful. Often is not.
No.
And that requires us to look at ourselves. Like, what are we getting? Like, what are we getting from that? What's that really about? What's the root cause there?
Yeah, it's hard for me to say that I need help and that I'm in need,
Yeah.
you know? And I think oftentimes that's kind of the crux of it.
Yeah. Yeah. So good. Thank you so much for doing this, for making the time.
Oh, what a pleasure, Justine. So
I
so
appreciate it.
grateful for your work. Keep it up. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Where can my community connect with you?
The best place to find me is on LinkedIn.
Okay.
You
Okay.
can catch me on LinkedIn. I'm not really involved in many other social
Yeah.
outlets. I should probably be, but I'm not.
Or not. I think it's
Yeah,
good. Like, I do, like, I
like 1 hour a week maybe or something like that. But I
it's
am so afraid of the trap.
no, there's so much noise. I don't even know if it's worth it much anymore. And yet at the same time, I just had this conversation with somebody. I was like, if we don't go on there and be the light, what happens? And so
Hmm,
that's the only thing that's keeping me sharing, but I'm done consuming. So, because it's not helpful and it's not real life right now. It's really, really not. And so, um, that's why I do like, although Chad did say, he goes, I just read a post about how LinkedIn's turned into Facebook and everyone's really upset about it. And I was like, I mean, but we're not two people. We're one person. Work, and you're not a work person and a home person. So it kind of makes sense that it would
right.
move that way. But I
That's
don't
right.
know. Also, get your face out of your screen and look at the people in front of you and go serve your community.
Amen.
Right. So, all right.
Amen.
Awesome. Thank you, my friend. I appreciate you.
Hey, thank you, Justine. Have a great rest of the day.
Thank you for listening to the Courage is Built Here podcast. Whether you're brand new to this work or living it out loud every day, I hope today was helpful, hopeful, and a reminder that you're not alone. What one bit of courage will you take from this episode, and how will you walk it out? If this episode encouraged you, share it with a friend, leave us a review, and please make sure you like and subscribe. New episodes come out every Wednesday on your favorite podcast platform and Fridays on YouTube. For more resources, head to JustineFroelker.com and click to my store. Because courage isn't a one-time thing, it's built right here, one small choice at a time, and especially between us.